from my perspective, regardless of size of nonprofit organization, there is a common thread of success linked to the quality of the board members and the
Absolutely.
dynamic that they have with the leader, right? With the executive
Yeah,
director
with the
and
staff. Yep.
right. So I'm curious from your perspective, you've been at running the Sierra Club Foundation, particularly since 2016, so almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
What would be your advice for other nonprofit leaders that maybe they don't have a great board, right? And they're challenged. They think the board's not committed, not doing enough. What advice would you give for them to try to fill out? And there's a tension there. It's interesting too because from a pure governance perspective, the board elects the or hires rather hires and fires the
Yeah,
executive
yeah,
director.
they're the supervisor for the executive director or the
Right.
CEO.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
advice do you have around boards and creating a successful board for other nonprofit leaders?
Well, for me, the top is like real clarity on what you want to do together. So I think there's, and that can be through strategic planning, through clarity of goals and outcomes. And then the second piece to me is not what we're doing, but also how we do it together. And so that's a culture conversation. And within the culture conversation, I think are, government governance conversations. How does the staff and board interact? So for my board, I feel really fortunate. I have a great board of directors and a high trust level with them because we're very transparent, but we're also really clear about the roles and responsibilities, both amongst the board and then between the board and staff. So for instance, my board has very clear committees. We have descriptions of what is the role of every committee and what's their responsibility, clarity on the roles of individual board directors when we go out to recruit a new board director and say, here, everything from time commitment we're asking you to whatever. And then third thing we have is our executive committee serves as the nominating committee. And so we have a regular check-in on a board matrix and say, okay, here's a gap. We really need someone with nonprofit finance experience because someone just got off our board. Well, let's prioritize that. Or we don't have a board member that represents the Midwest. We have mostly folks on the coast. So let's elevate that geographic need. Or the demographics on our board are too homogenous. So we will, at least a few times a year, starting with the executive committee and then the whole board, have real conversations about like, in this coming year, we've got 2 or 3 board members cycling off. We'd like to get 3 or 4 new board members on. Here are the priority attributes of those board directors. And then let's brainstorm about connections and relationships we have and bring those folks on. I think that committee structure piece is really important as well because our board meetings tend to be quarterly and they're 4 hours long. And the reason we can have increasingly we have those board meetings be strategic conversations versus reporting back. And so we do a bulk of our work in individual committee meetings. And then a lot of times we can have a consent agenda with a number of items that just get, we expect our board to look at all the materials ahead of time, be ready. And to get that business done is really dependent on the board as a whole, trusting the individual committees and their work. So I would just say there's all that. And at the end of the day, we do annual goals and outcomes that the board approves. Those annual goals and outcomes also become my performance goals and objectives. And then we do regular check-ins as well. So that kind of alignment on what are the annual priorities, what are the expectations, very transparent about getting feedback on my performance. And then the flip side, our board members are very open and want feedback on their performance as supporting the organization from me and others as well. So I just think that trust and transparency and being open to feedback and, as I say, assume positive intent at all times is super important.